Okay, here we go. Today, Liz Wolfe with the Beltway libertarian outlet Reason Magazine released a video critique, or I would say hit piece of RFK Jr. We're going to break this down. Now, it is a 9-minute video in total. We're not going to play the entire 9 minute. I did cut it down a little bit. If you want to watch the entire video, the link is down below if you want to watch this, what I would call a hit piece, and you'll see why I call it a hit piece if you want to watch it in its entirety. But first of all, who is Liz Wolfe? Well, Liz Wolfe is, obviously she's a writer with Reason Magazine. This time she did a video. She also is one of the rotating hosts. You see her every so often on The Hills Rising. I never hosted with her on Rising, but she does fill in for Robbie Swabe every so often, and Robbie is also with Reason Magazine. So Reason is a libertarian outlet. It's a Beltway libertarian, and so she's coming from a libertarian perspective, although other libertarians are not agreeing with her perspective. In fact, this video is not being received very well by the public, so she released it today. It's gone viral. A lot of people are saying, wow, this is crap, including other libertarians. Here's actually the Libertarian Party of Ohio. This is what they had to say about the video. They said, we're not about to go vote D, but Reason can't stand that RFK gets a hell of a lot right that they've chosen the establishment line on. By the way, he's actually for medical freedom. I suppose that some opinions aren't respectable enough for some libertarian publications. So libertarians are now attacking libertarians on this. Now we're seeing like they're eating their own on this because, well, let's just go ahead and watch some of this. First, I want to show you Liz Wolfe, though, like I said, has been on Rising as one of the co-hosts there. She has an obvious vitriol bias against RFK Jr. Let me just play you this little clip from back in middle of May. So this was 2 months ago when they were doing, her and Brianna Joy Gray were doing a segment on RFK Jr. And this is how Liz Wolfe started off before she even started giving really her opinion about the segment they were talking about. This is what she said about RFK Jr.
The fact of the matter is RFK Jr. is kind of a wackadoodle nutjob conspiracy theorist.
Okay, so he's a wackadoodle nutjob conspiracy theorist. She didn't back that up at that time when she made that comment. She didn't back it up with any evidence. She just called him that. She said that she's made comments similar to that several times on Rising. So she has an obvious bias. She thinks he's a wackadoodle nutjob conspiracy theorist. Okay. I contacted her actually after she made that comment on Rising, and I invited her on this show to give a critique of RFK Jr. She declined at that time and said that she was working on a piece and that after she released the piece, then she would, potentially come on the show and discuss it. So we may have Liz Wolfe on. I haven't contacted her. I just saw the video today for the first time. But this must be the video that she was talking about when she was telling me about it a couple of months ago. So we're going to watch some of it. I've edited it down to about 6 minutes of the 9 minutes, only because I took out stuff that I just, it was like kind of repetitive, or it was a lot of RFK Jr. talking about his own positions and then her critiquing him. But again, you can watch the whole thing if you want, but let's just go through some of it. So let's start off with... let's just start. This is not the very beginning of it. This is like a minute cut out, but then let's jump in.
RFK Jr. is not worthy of the rehabilitation tour he's been getting from pundits, podcasters, and tech luminaries. He's built a career as a professional contrarian. He pushes tabloid-quality reporting, and he wildly extrapolates from little grains of truth. He frequently implies that the establishment is corrupt at best, evil at worst, and he winks at the existence of puppet masters pulling the strings of major institutions.
Okay, so that gives you a taste for how the whole video goes. Clearly, this is a major critique, again, hit piece. There she is. She's criticizing the fact that he implies the establishment is corrupt at best, evil at worst. Like, that's a terrible thing to be implying. Look, many of us imply this. Many of us don't even imply it. We just outright say it. We believe that the establishment is corrupt. That is the feeling that many Americans are feeling. And if you're not feeling that at this point, you're pretty out of step, I would say, with what the majority of Americans are feeling. So that's kind of an interesting thing for her to point out right away, that he implies that the establishment is corrupt at best, evil at worst, and that there's these puppet masters pulling the strings. Like, how dare he? Okay, let's continue.
His organization, Children's Health Defense, gives opponents of vaccine mandates and government overreach a bad name by lumping us together with anti-vaxxers.
No, actually, CHD, Children's Health Defense, did not lump in every critique of vaccines and every critique of vaccine mandates in with anti-vaxxers. That was not Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s doing, nor was it Children's Health Defense's doing. You know who did that? Who did that was establishment media. That's who did that. They were the ones that anyone who voiced any sort of concern about the vaccines, even after getting the vaccine, if they got the vaccine and said, oh my gosh, now I have an injury, they were labeled an anti-vaxxer. And it wasn't Robert F. Kennedy Jr. who did that. It wasn't Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or Children's Health Defense that basically said anybody who raised a single concern whatsoever about the COVID-19 vaccine was an anti-vaxxer. So she's got that one wrong. If she has a critique or if she's got a grievance about being lumped in as an anti-vaxxer when she was herself criticizing mandates, it wasn't Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s doing. So, all right, let's keep going.
That's why most of the polio today, 70% of the polio today is vaccine polio that came from the vaccines. By the way, 80% of the polio cases on Earth today, according to the WHO, are vaccine-strain polio. That means people got it from vaccinated people.
What Kennedy said is technically true, but misleading.
Okay. It's technically true, but it's misleading. Do you know what this sounds like? This sounds like those fact checkers that we witnessed all throughout social media during the pandemic when they basically said, look, okay, what they said is accurate, but you're getting the wrong idea from what they said. So even though they're telling you the truth, you got the wrong idea when you listened to it, because the idea you got was that maybe the vaccine wasn't safe, or maybe the vaccines didn't stop the spread, or maybe you got these wrong ideas that you weren't supposed to just do what you're told, you minion, you. So when she says, you know, this is technically true, what he says, but it's misleading, it's really no different than those social media fact checkers who basically just tell you, you're an idiot. Like, you've heard the truth, even though this person's telling the truth, but I don't believe that I don't believe you're going to interpret it the way I want you to interpret it. It's going to lead you down the wrong path. And so therefore, false, misinformation, malinformation, right? Disinformation, all of those bad informations. All right, keep going.
For the last 18 years, Kennedy has been a leading figure in the anti-vax movement.
My principal objective is that vaccines, the childhood vaccines are immune from pre-licensing safety testing. Pharmaceutical drugs are now the third biggest killer in America after heart attacks and cancer. So no, I do not intend to make it easier to get drugs to market.
This is a rhetorical ploy to make his vaccine fear-mongering sound reasonable. The Food and Drug Administration is, if anything, overly cautious with vaccine testing. Bringing a vaccine to market generally takes 10 to 15 years and costs several $1 billion.
Okay. All right. So a couple things going on here. First of all, she's coming at this obviously from a libertarian standpoint. So libertarians, and Robbie, when I was on Rising with him, and I love Robbie Suave, he's one of my favorite people in the world. But he would always complain that things just take too long through the FDA. And this is a common complaint with libertarians, at least the libertarians that I know at Reason Magazine. They believe that the FDA should rush these things through, and it's up to you as a person whether or not you want to take it. In some ways, I agree with this. I agree with the idea of give me all the information and let me decide, because what we see is a lot of times the FDA won't approve drugs or medications that may or may not be life-saving for somebody who's already going to die, like their lives are they're at the end, and they're being told you don't have the right to try. And during the Trump administration, he signed the right to try bill, which allows people the right to try drugs that are not FDA approved. So there is a criticism there, and some of that is valid. But a lot of us would prefer, and we would really like for the FDA to operate as the institution it's supposed to operate as, that it is supposed to be doing rigorous testing, rigorous trials in order to ensure that the drugs, the vaccines, the therapies that are released to the public are actually, for one, they actually work, like unlike the Alzheimer's drug that they rushed out that cost you, like 80 grand, and then they found out that it was just a money-making ploy, it did nothing. So we would prefer the FDA to actually do what it's supposed to do. But the problem is that 45% of the budget of the FDA, it used to be an entirely taxpayer-funded entity, but it no longer, since the Reagan administration, it has become now an entity that relies on user fees. 45% of the FDA budget comes from the very pharmaceutical companies that are asking for approval. And this has been known for a long time. This is something that has been Yale University even went out there and said, this is kind of an odd thing. And they do research studies on this, on the impacts of what happened after the Reagan administration pulled the taxpayer funds from the FDA, making it to where you have to pay to play. So the idea was, well, why should taxpayers have to foot the bill for trials and testing? It shouldn't be the government that does that. We should make the big pharmaceutical companies that are trying to get their drugs tested and their drugs through, they should pay for these expensive trials. They should pay for all of the testing. And yeah, that was a bad idea. And the reason why it was a bad idea was because they're the ones who are funding the FDA, and jobs are reliant on those funds. The FDA would just approve drugs. And now we know that about a third of the drugs that have been approved by the FDA have later come back, we find, to have significant side effects. They've been pulled from the market completely. There's been quite a few issues with about 30% of the drugs, the therapies, and the vaccines that have been released by the FDA. We saw now with the FDA rushing through the COVID vaccine exactly what happened there. So for Kennedy to be cautious about the drugs, the therapies, the vaccines that are being released by the FDA, most people don't have time in their day to do all of their own research. They're busy. They've got their own lives. They need to just rely on the FDA saying to them, it's safe. And then they say, okay, I'm going to have to take your word for it. That's your job. And my faith in you is that you're going to be telling me the truth. Now Americans cannot feel that confident about the FDA because we know the truth about it. We know that it's nearly half funded by pharmaceutical companies. And so, yeah, when Kennedy says, look, they're not doing the trials, they're not doing the safety, they're not doing all the things that they're supposed to be doing. Liz's critique is, so what? Get it over with. Rush it through faster. And now we saw what happened with the COVID vaccine. So is that, I just think that probably the majority of people are not really agreeing with her that it's a good idea to just rush things through, and who cares, and it's taking forever anyway. So it's just kind of an interesting point that she's making. I don't think it's a good one. Keep going.
He's correct that food allergy, asthma, and childhood obesity rates are increasing. But there's no evidence it's caused by vaccines. RFK is once again flubbing the particulars in order to pin blame on a single culprit.
Okay, so she's saying there was a clip that I'd taken out of it, and it was RFK Jr. talking about all of these different vaccines and how the childhood vaccination schedule is increased and it's caused all of these different ailments. And she's saying, okay, yeah, these have increased, but there's no correlation with that being vaccines. There's also no correlation that it isn't. So these are the types of problems that many of us have when you say things like, when people say things like vaccines don't cause autism because there's no studies that prove it causes autism. There's also really no studies proving that it doesn't. When they said in the beginning of the COVID pandemic, I fought people tooth and nail on this, when they'd say there's no proof that the vaccines cause any sort of injuries, any sort of long-term side effects. And there's also no studies proving they don't. So that's not a good enough reason to just say, so your critique sucks. Keep going.
But what do you think happens when you get into office? Like if you're talking about your uncle who's assassinated and you believe the intelligence agencies were part of that, what happens to you?
Well, I gotta be careful. I'm aware of that, and I'm not, I'm aware of that danger.
He's actually not a persecuted truth teller, although recent attempts to go after Rogan for having him on or to cut him out of public debate feed that myth.
Oh, Liz, you missed it entirely on this one. He wasn't talking about being censored or limited. He was talking about being assassinated. Okay.
So what would RFK Jr. be like as president? Part of his appeal, to libertarians at least, is that he's staunchly anti-war and a huge critic of COVID lockdowns and mandates. But he's fundamentally a big government liberal. He supports Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal. He favors heavy-handed government intrusion in the realm of environmental policy. He's anti-nuclear energy. He wants pharmaceutical companies to burn in hell. And he seems to believe in an almost Alex Jones-esque dramatized concept of the deep state.
So that was just a classic ad hominem right there at the end, where she basically is saying, oh my gosh, don't listen to him because he believes in what could be, even though he's never said, I believe in Alex Jones' concept of deep state, she's claiming that he believes in an Alex Jones concept of deep state, causing you to recoil, right? Because she's banking on the fact that you as a viewer might not like Alex Jones. You think Alex Jones is a conspiracy theorist. So she's trying to equate RFK Jr. to Alex Jones in order to get you to say, oh, he's like an Alex Jones conspiracy theorist, without showing you that he's actually agreed at all about, with Alex Jones. He's never shown that. So that was just trying to equate him to somebody you might not like in order to get you to not like him. So it's like an ad hominem attack on him. Okay, we'll keep going.
He also favors massive wealth redistribution.
I don't think these huge disparities in wealth are healthy for our country or healthy for democracy.
Okay. He has stated, yes, he is a Democrat. He is running as a Democrat. So as a libertarian, of course, you're not going to like all of his policy ideas, and that's a fair enough critique. If you're making a video for libertarians to consume, I think it's fair enough to say, why would we vote for this guy? He's a Democrat. Fair enough, right? I mean, if you don't like Democrats, some of their basic policies. RFK Jr., however, is not for wealth redistribution. She's talking about like a socialist style. I don't know what she's exactly implying on that, but he is, and he has stated numerous times that he is a free market capitalist. So she edited that clip of him talking about Elizabeth Warren's plan for a wealth tax. We don't get to hear what he says after that. But we do know what he has been saying for literally decades. Here's a clip from him like 14 years ago saying that he is a free market capitalist.
There is no stronger advocate for free market capitalism than myself.
Okay, so that was 14 years ago. And then we've got even Marianne Williamson. She criticized him in a tweet saying RFK Jr. says he's a free market capitalist guy. I'm a hyper-capitalism has gone off the rails and lost any semblance of moral center and has to be regulated more strictly before it kills us all kind of gal. That was just less than a month ago. So for 14 years ago, he says, I'm a big staunch defender of free market capitalism. You've got Marianne Williamson saying he says he's a free market capitalism guy. He has been saying it on practically every interview he's done. So I don't know how she can then say, unless she hasn't done enough research and not followed him enough, to know that he is staunchly free market capitalist. So I don't know where this whole wealth redistribution idea comes from for him. That's just actually not anything he touts. We'll keep going.
He points out that government and big business have an unholy alliance.
The CIA is ultimately working for industry like the oil industry, the coal industry, and the military contractors. I mean, USDA is run by Cargill, Smithfield, Monsanto, Bo Pilgrim, John Tyson.
But he doesn't understand that too much regulation is the root cause. He just thinks large companies are inherently bad.
Okay, so he's calling out the CIA, and she's sitting there like, oh, how, so he doesn't realize that the real problem is that there's too much regulation. That's the real issue. It's not the fact that these big companies are, his criticism is that these big companies have corporate capture, that they have been able to basically line the pockets of the people who are supposed to be regulating them, and they're creating regulation that then benefits the big player. She's saying, well, no, it's the regulation itself. They're actually saying the same thing. They're both saying something very similar. He's just saying the root of that is when you allow them to buy people off, it's going to lead to regulation that is going to be very problematic. She says, no, it's the regulation in general. But if you are a libertarian, I don't know how you prevent, libertarians just fundamentally believe no regulation, no intervention. This is the biggest criticism I have of Rand Paul. I love Rand Paul often, but he will go on and on talking about social media censorship, big social media censorship, how it's terrible, we've got to do. But then when you ask him, well, what do you want to do about it? He says, no regulation. Like, shouldn't we regulate social media or something to make sure that they're not allowed? Oh, no, don't want to do that. So there's this lack of, if you just allow them to run amok and let them do what they want to do, they will do what they want to do. And what they do is they go and line the pockets of their politicians, and they get them to create regulation that benefits them. It's not that they're swaying the regulation. They're getting them to create new regulation that helps them, that puts the little guy, that pits them against the little guy. So how are you going to stop that they're actually saying something very similar. So it's also an interesting criticism that she has. She just says that he goes after the money, and she says, no, it's actually the function of the regulation that's a problem.
He says he's concerned about government spending and throws out wild figures to make his point. But he's actually no better than any establishment Republican or Democrat in his unwillingness to scale back elder care entitlements that are actually responsible for driving the federal government into bankruptcy.
I would say it's a red line for me to touch Social Security or Medicare.
How dare he? How dare he not want to cut Medicare and Social Security from all those old people? Let those old people starve. Let them just wallow without medication, without any sort of help. This is also, people often accuse me of being a libertarian. I'm not a libertarian. I do not agree with that. I do believe that we have an obligation as a society to care for our elderly. I do think that. And we have to figure out a way to make sure that we can do that and afford that. And maybe if we have to reform things or change things but we're not going to rip it away. And she's like, he doesn't want to actually get rid of Social Security. What kind of a monster is he? Why wouldn't he just let them wallow in poverty and death on their doorstep? I don't understand that criticism, but maybe that's just me. We'll keep going.
What's surreal about libertarians and conservatives now embracing RFK Jr. is that he's publicly fantasized about jailing his political opponents and cracking down on free speech for years. At the People's Climate March in 2014, Kennedy said this.
Do I think they should be in jail? I think they should be enjoying 3 hots and a cot at The Hague with all the other war criminals who are there. Do I think the Koch brothers should be prosecuted for reckless endangerment? Absolutely.
The First Amendment does not protect fraudulent speech. If you say something that is fraudulent, you're not protected.
It just seems like that way madness lies, because the government will always come up with a pretext for saying your speech is not just wrong, it's criminal, and you need to be shut down.
Well, I don't know, but I do believe that prosecutors and judges make decisions about what's fraud all the time.
He's not a real free speech advocate, and he's not especially thoughtful about the principles or people he endorses. After all, this is a man who once heaped praise on the socialist dictator Hugo Chavez, touting his bogus literacy programs and commitment to democracy.
Okay, I think this is the part of the video that has the most legitimate criticism of RFK Jr. I do know that people are saying, well, he said these things 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and she points that out. Like, people are coming back at me saying, well, should we hold him accountable for the things that he said 10 or 15 years ago? Yes, you should when somebody's running for president of the United States. I do think it's fair to look at their entire life's work all the way to the beginning to see how they have, what the things that they've said, the things that they've championed, what if they've evolved, how they may have evolved. Do you believe in their evolution, or do you think that maybe they're just swayed in some way or the other? I think it's completely fair to look at those things that he has said in the past about jailing people or going after people. She brings up the Koch brothers. Reason magazine is heavily funded by the Koch brothers. That was actually, according to 2012 disclosures, its largest donors were the David H. Koch Charitable Foundation and also the Sarah Scaife Foundation. So, they have taken, they're a Koch-funded organization. So, of course, she's going to have a criticism of him saying that about the Koch brothers. But I do think it's fair to go and look at that. And I think that many people would maybe think twice about Kennedy, knowing that he's had this history. I think, though, a lot of liberals, particularly people on the left, maybe this has happened on the right a bit, but we've seen a lot of this on the left where people believed certain things and then they sort of had the red pill moment where they were like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't agree with this anymore. He has mentioned about climate change. He believes that it's now a corporate captured movement, that they are now using it for their benefit. And so, but I do think that this is like the most fair aspect of her video, of everything that's in the video. So let's go to the last parts here.
So what would RFK Jr. do in the White House? And is it fair to hold 15-year-old sound bites against him, as some of his fans that I've sparred with have claimed?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Yes, it is fair. I do think that's fair.
One thing I'll say for RFK Jr. is that unlike most politicians, he's been extraordinarily consistent in his views. He thinks the world is divided into heroes and villains, and he makes wild, unsupported claims that portray things as simpler than they really are. The difference is that he's no longer a widely ignored crackpot environmental lawyer. He's asking you to vote him into the White House.
He's not a wildly ignored crackpot environmental lawyer who's won hundreds of cases against these big companies. He's just again, that's an ad hominem attack on him. Crackpot, wackadoo, nut job, conspiracy theorist, Alex Jones, deep state. These are just, it's not a serious critique. I was hoping and expecting from her a much more serious critique of RFK Jr. I felt like this was, there was obviously a lot of emotion there, a lot of feeling like I don't like this guy and this is why I don't like this guy, rather than it being really about here's the argument. This is what he has done. This is what he has said, and here's the actual literal argument for why he's not a good candidate, or why what she said at the very beginning, he shouldn't be rehabilitated by pundits and people like me or whatever. I think there's a lot of other things she could have criticized him about, but she didn't get into those. She instead stuck to the things that really obviously upset her the most, which is that she just thinks this guy is a wackadoodle conspiracy theorist nut job, anti-vaxxer, and now he's running for president. She don't like him. So I don't know. I wasn't convinced by it. I do think that there are some good points that were made. Overall, not so much. And but again, if you want to watch the entire video for yourself, that was 6 minutes of it. There's an additional 3 minutes that I did cut out in the interest of time. You can click on that link below and watch it. But and then email me your thoughts. I would love to hear from you. What do you think of the video? Or maybe you felt like there were some really good critiques in there. Maybe you think I'm totally wrong. Email me, kim@kimiversen.com. All right, well, many are worried that the dollar may be in trouble. The world is turning away from the U.S. and shoring themselves up to avoid sanctions and other economic fallout. There was even a story out today, and we're going to cover it at some point this week. Hopefully we'll get to it, that the BRICS nations may be announcing that they're coming out with a gold-backed currency at their convention in August. They may be announcing this. So, something to look at. The fact is that gold has been able to withstand economic upheaval. It has a history of being incredibly stable. That is why it's so attractive to people. And you can own it for yourself in a tax-sheltered retirement account with the help of Birch Gold. That's right, Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k, maybe from a previous employer, into an IRA in gold. And the best part is you don't pay a penny out of pocket. Just visit birchgold.com/Kim for your free info kit. They're going to hold your hand through the whole process. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of happy customers. You could be the next one. So visit birchgold.com/Kim to get your free info kit on gold.